Welcome to Veteran Voices, a podcast dedicated to giving a voice to those that have served in our country's armed forces. On this series, which is part of the Supply Chain Now family of programming, we sit down with a wide variety of veterans and veteran advocates to gain their insights, perspective, and experiences. And we discuss some of the most vital issues facing veterans today. Join us for this episode of Veteran Voices. Hey, good afternoon. Scott Luton here with you on Veteran Voices. Welcome back to the show. On this program, we dive into a variety of topics impacting our veteran community. Today's show, we've got an outstanding opportunity to talk with and get to know better a veteran that just recently retired and is transitioning into the private sector. So stay tuned for that. Not only are we going to learn more about his background, but we're going to learn more about what transition can look like in 2020. Hey, quick programming note. If you like what you hear here today, go check out our podcast. You can find us and subscribe wherever you get your podcast from. This podcast is part of the Supply Chain Now family of programming, and you can learn more about that at supplychainnowradio.com. All right, I want to welcome in, with no further ado, our featured guest here today, Theodore Turner, recent retiree from the U.S. Army, and Theodore goes by Ted. So Ted Turner, how you doing, sir?
I'm doing good. It's a hot day in North Carolina, but I'm doing good.
Hey, I'm with you. It's a hot day in the metro Atlanta area. Looks like we might get a little more rain, though. But, hey, it's been good to connect with you. I think we met through Vets to Industry, I believe, and some of our mutual friends there. Great to get to know you earlier, and really honored to have you on the show here to really get to know you a little bit better, but also share you with our audience and share your experiences and your insights with our audience. So great to see you in person today.
Thank you.
And I guess this is the digital version of in person in 2020, Ted, right?
This is it. This is the best it gets. This is the FaceTime of the future.
That's right. All right. So for starters, and by the way, congrats on your official retirement, which I think was 1 June 2020, right?
Yes.
And you separate on the 1st of September. Is that right?
It's 1st September when I get issued that infamous blue ID card.
Man, and you were just telling me before we went live here that you've got facial hair for the first time in 20 years, right?
First time. I couldn't grow it while I was in because it just wasn't long enough. And then now, this is the first time I see myself with a beard since I joined the military.
It feels all different. That means, as we talked about, that means your transition must be going well. So, all right. So, Ted, I've got a leg up on our audience because we've had a chance to talk beforehand, and I've had a chance to get to know you a little bit better. But let's do the same for our audience. So, for starters, tell us, where you're from, and give us a story or two, from your upbringing.
I'm born and raised in Atlanta. I grew up on the west side of the ATL. I grew up right outside Turner Field. So since '92, I watched every Braves game that came, every World Series. If it got Georgia in front of it, that's my team. Win, lose, or draw, I'm a big Georgia fan, Atlanta fan, no matter what it is. If it come out of the state of Georgia, that's my team.
Love that.
Raised by a single parent, so I'm the oldest of 5. I have a lot going on here being a single father.
So you said you were the oldest of 5, is that right?
Yes, I'm the oldest of 5. So I'm the one that everybody looks to for advice and everything. I'm the one that everybody wants attention from.
Yes.
Let me just transition to my office.
So the oldest of 5, and all 5, did you say, were raised by a single parent?
Yes, raised by my mom, single mom, very strong, independent woman. Yep. She makes everything worth doing. I joined the military was to get out of Atlanta and to just do better for yourself, travel the world, serve the country, and be a role model for all my little brothers and sisters.
So we're talking about what made you join the military, kind of as we segued a little bit. Was it going to be the Army, and that was going to be your number one choice, or did you ever think about the other branches?
Actually, the military wasn't even my first thought. I wanted to go to Georgia Tech because I wanted to be an engineer. And then talking to my recruiter, we had a recruiter that came to our school every single day. So talking to him, they say he did his job. He's very convincing. I ended up joining the military, got the college money, got the GI Bill, and it ended up being good. I was going to only do 3 years, but once you got in, 9/11 happened, and I ended up staying forever.
You were a Chief Warrant Officer, or CW2, I guess, in the Army when you retired. And so clearly, if I'm not mistaken, you have to earn a degree in order to become that officer, right?
Not for the warrant officers. So for your regular officers, we call them O-grade officers, the lieutenants, captains, major, generals, yep. They have to have a degree before they join.
Okay.
For the warrant officer, you have to do some enlisted time. So I made it through the rank of from private to the rank of sergeant first class, E7. I did that in my first 8 years of military.
8 years?
Yes. Then
that's quick.
Which is unheard of for my MOS, which at that time was a wheel mechanic. So I came up through the ranks. I did a little drill sergeant time. And once I finished my drill sergeant time, I switched over to be a warrant officer because I want to stay in my field of managing equipment, managing people, and stay close to the troops. As a regular O-grade officer, you don't get to stay close to the troops unless you're a commander. You're not a commander, you're all over the place.
So I'm showing a little bit of my Air Force ignorance because we didn't have warrant officers in the Air Force, and I was enlisted.
Air Force is the only branch that don't have them. Marines, Army, and Navy has a chief, but it's not the same chief.
So you're saying the Air Force was missing out. So you're filling in the gap for me because I wasn't sure about some of the differences, some of the requirements. And so if we can go back for a second, so your MOS was what was your MOS again?
So I started as a 63 Bravo, which was a light wheel mechanic.
Yep.
That's the person that fixes everything from your big semi-trucks down to your ride lawnmowers.
Okay.
They changed that in 2003 to a 91 Bravo, which you fix everything from a tank down to your ride lawnmowers. Once I switched over to warrant officer, I became a 915 Alpha, which is just an automotive technician. So you fix on everything short of an aircraft. If it touches the ground, that includes generators, trailers. Sometimes you have to deal with weapons and night vision, but you touch everything except the aircraft.
You also mentioned you went from E1 to E7 in 8 years.
Yes.
In an MOS that you mentioned that it's next to impossible to be a fast burner like that.
Yeah, it normally takes 14 years to make E7 in MOS.
So we're going to talk about accomplishments in a minute, and clearly that's one, and we're going to get the story behind that. If I could clarify for a second, in that as you were describing the differences between enlisted and the warrant officers and the O-grade officers, the traditional commissioned officers, is it true that not only could you do the work and have that high technical mechanical aptitude, but you also managed a lot of the work taking place? Did you do both of that as in your final role?
Yes, so you covered, because what you have in that enlisted background, and me, I had the C enlisted background, and what you have in the, now being a warrant officer, you're now a subject matter expert at your current field, you can cover down, so there's really no gap. So not only are you in the weeds, you're also the person that's telling the O-grade officer, this is what you go tell to the boss, this is what you go tell to the colonel or general, because you're the face, we make things happen. They normally call warrant officers silent professionals. Silent professionals? Yes.
Really?
The whole goal is to get the work done and not look for credit, not look for accolades. You just making sure that everybody come home, everything's done safe.
One last question again, and because this is a gap for me learning about the warrant officer segment of the military. So your first 8 years, you retired after 20, right?
Yes.
Okay. So your first 8 years were enlisted, and your last 12 was as a warrant officer, or how did that work?
So my first 12 was enlisted. I didn't switch over to a warrant until I hit 12 years in.
Okay.
And then from there, I switched over as a warrant. So my last 8 years was a warrant officer.
Okay. All right. So let's move to some of your favorite accomplishments. I mean, clearly, I can already cherry pick a few, and I can already make a few assumptions based on our couple of conversations. But what do you think? I mean, for starters, let's go to the 8 year from E1 to E7. I mean, what were some of the accomplishments that fueled that meteoric rise?
For one, I say I had good leadership. I've been every unit I've been in, starting out at 101st, which is in Kentucky. Moving to Germany, I was in Elvis O unit, 501st. Every unit I went to, I've had good leadership. My first 10 years of the military was deployments. I went to Iraq 5 times. In those 5 times, I trained the Iraqi army where I lived with them for a year. You and 12 other soldiers, and the rest of the base is just Iraqi Army. You're teaching them how to be it's basically like Iraqi drill sergeant, if that makes sense. And it all helps because things that people in my MOS couldn't get to do. Because normally in my MOS, you're in the motor pool, you're turning wrenches, you're fixing things. The main thing would be the mentors I had and the leadership that I had coming up. Even if it started back from my recruiter. You go in, you do what you have to do, you fight for the hard jobs, and you make the best of what they give you.
So as someone, going back to your 4 other siblings, as someone that really valued that opportunity to be a mentor and to help coach and advise others, to now your military career where you're attributing a lot of your early success to great leaders, great mentors. I'm sure you're also an opportunity to mentor others while you're in even that first phase of your military career.
Normally, mentor soldiers, you have to. That's in a lot of the creeds we do. My first time I get to mentor people up front when I became a drill sergeant. You're taking civilians right off the road and turn them to soldiers, and they come from all walks of life. You're the first impression they see of the military, so what you do and how you act and everything goes a long way. To this day, most of my guys, I might not remember them, but they remember me. And they're all high-ranking, either high-ranking officers or high-ranking NCOs. And that's my feel good to it. That knowing that you help somebody get where they want to be. When they tell you, but they don't tell you then, but they tell you now. You just sit back. I didn't know. I'll just make sure I set a good example for you.
That's such a great point. I remember Staff Sergeant Lemke was our drill instructor in the Air Force back in the summer of 1994 at Lackland Air Force Base in very hot San Antonio. But you make a great point there. I mean, that first leader or two that folks knew, these recruits knew to the Army, connect with, get trained with, get chewed out by, get mentored by, it is such a deep impact that they have on their formative years, at least in the military. And so you took that role very seriously, and that helped fuel your success and probably how well you did your job, huh?
It definitely played a part because I still keep in contact with a lot of those people today. For example, my very first company commander, I was her first guide arm bearer with the person to hold the flag.
Oh, yeah.
She's my first company commander, and she's a full board colonel. Her family know me as the driver. I was her driver in Iraq. Saved her from a couple IEDs or whatever. To this day, she had to be in at least over 20 years because she was in the Army 5 years when I met her. But it's one of the few that she keep in contact over the years. If I have issues, I have questions, I call her. But I think she's up for 1-star. She's about to make 1-star general. So.
Hey, the value of an outstanding network, whether you're in the military or if you're in the private sector, I mean, that's a consistent truth. Okay, is there, as we talk more about your career success in the military, your fast rise, your achieving, to be a Chief Warrant Officer, anything else that really, those accomplishments that fueled that, anything else that really stands out to you?
Probably the main one that stands out to me is the fact that I was able to finish college while in the military or active duty. A lot of people say it's hard, where when you're in the military, they give you go to school for free. I tell all my soldiers all the time, no reason you should got in the military with a minimum of a associate degree, if that, a social or bachelor, because it's free. So when you get out, you can use your GI Bill for something else, like a PhD or other certifications. So I was able to finish that while I was in Korea in 2016, finish my master's degree. And now I'm hoping to start a doctorate next year.
So let's shift gears a little bit here. You've already mentioned 1 or 2 leaders that either you worked for or worked with. What's one person, one either manager you worked with, a leader you worked with or you worked for that really stands out in terms of that made you better, that you really wanted to be like or get better at certain attributes that they had? Who really sticks out?
She was my first sergeant. Now she's the sergeant major of the whole what we call Ordnance Corps up in Fort Lee, Virginia. Her name is Petra Cassandra, and she was what we call the super NCO, like NCO of the year. Never made a mistake. Always knew what was going on. Knew every soldier in the unit name. She the one that convinced me to go drill sergeant. because my goal was I don't want to be a drill sergeant. I just want to I wanted to keep deploying until I couldn't no more. She the one forced me to be a drill sergeant because she said I had the talent to train people, lead people, good at motivate people, and keeping people's spirits up. That's one who everybody in the unit wanted to be like, because she was always by the book. Off work, on work, you would never catch her slipping.
Man, those people, they're so good. The folks that are always on, huh? All right. So let's talk about, before we talk transition, I want to make sure that me and our audience are familiar with your timeline. So did you wrap up serving as a drill instructor in 2012, and then the remainder of your time was back, logistics and transportation and fleet maintenance and whatnot? Tell us about that, if you would.
August 15, 2012, when I picked on Warrant Officer rank. And then from there, I came to Fort Bragg. After doing airborne school, came to Fort Bragg. My first job was a fleet manager for a brigade, where not a brigade but a battalion, where you manage for infantry guys. Infantry units are good because at the end of the day they're going to walk. So the fleet is not as robust as it is most units. While you're doing it, you might be a fleet manager, but I'm also managing my own budget. I'm also managing my own personnel. I'm also managing any other program like safety, environmental. So as a warrant officer, you get everything in one, where if you're an O-grade officer, you only got to worry about that one topic they give you. If you're an S4 officer, you worry about budget. If you're an intel officer, you worry about intel. But for a warrant, you get all of it, because they figure your SEAL background, and the phrase they say is chief knows everything.
So really well-rounded, it sounds like chief warrant officers have to be.
Yes, you have to be.
It also seems to me that a chief warrant officer has to be able to go in and understand a situation, understand the data, understand the scope, understand what's going on, and then in the simplest terms possible, probably the most succinct terms possible, have to translate that to inform the O-level, the traditional commissioned officers. Is that accurate?
That makes sense, yes.
So you've got a ton of experience, that especially just in our, I love supply chain. That's what we talk about all the time. And supply chains don't happen. If fleets stop, if trucks, trains, ships, you name it, any of that stuff stops, global supply chains stop. And as it was put in the last few weeks with a guest on our show, no product, no program. Yeah. And that was, and that's so true. So to keep all this, these fleets moving, it takes really sharp people that whether it's at the detailed level or if it's at the operation or enterprise level, right? All points in between. So it would strike me to believe that you've got a ton of opportunity. Is that aspect of your skill set what you're looking to apply, and the types of positions you're looking to transition into as you move into the private sector?
That's very accurate, because being in the military, being in logistics, you work, the mission don't move or finish without you. For example, my last job was in a special operations unit, where we controlled 30 countries in Southeast Asia. My mission was to make sure the fleets over there was good, to make sure the teams get the equipment they need, and while at the same time managing the whole program back here. For another example is I'm the safety officer for all 30 countries. So if anything happens in one of those countries, I'm the one that got to fill the report out. I'm the one that had to send it up to Big Army, and then have to do the investigation. So I like change management and logistics, because your hands in everything.
Yeah.
So you don't really get left out of the picture. You're not. It's more like having a MBA, BA rather than a BS. So I like that part, and I want to use all that in the civilian world, where I'm not just sitting in a cubicle and only got one thing to focus on. You get kind of bored after a while.
So it seems like to me that not only do you enjoy training and managing and mentoring the people side of the business, but also here you talk a lot about, kind of the process, the methodology, the data, and then, which is, of course, really important these days, any business, certainly in supply chain, but then taking deeper dives and investigating, getting the root cause, and getting to the facts so that there's an accurate understanding of what actually is or was or will be taking place. That can be mailed in oftentimes by a lot of folks in the industry. So it sounds like you've got quite a combination of not only skill sets, but stuff that you really love to do.
It's good seeing how everything starts from point A to point Z and everything it takes to do it. A lot of people don't know, okay, what makes this truck move? What makes it a successful mission for Amazon, for example. We just know I get a box I order something online, it's here in 2 days, sometimes same day. I have no clue what the process that just happened to make sure it get here as promised. That's the kind of stuff I like to know. It's the inner workings of any program, any organization.
Yeah,
you appreciate it more.
Agreed. And as consumers, and I'm including myself, folks that take things for granted. I mean, it really is amazing. However, what we've seen, and you may have seen it too, Ted, in recent months, especially in this pandemic environment, it seems like one of the silver linings is that folks are getting a whole new, whether they like it or not, a whole new appreciation of how global supply chains work and why they work. And that's why we are able to enjoy these things same day or next day or 2 days, whatever. Okay. So let's talk transition for a minute. What are some of your early observations when it comes? I know officially you've only been at it for 3 weeks or so, but what's some early observations related to your transition that you can share with us?
For us, for military, they give you 2 years to transition out. So 2 years from the day that you decide you want to retire, at your approval, is stuff. The first thing you start stressing about is, where do I fit in? How do I translate what I'm doing to the civilian world? And then especially been since you was young and didn't work before you joined the military, how do I do a job interview, or what do I not tell people? What do I tell people? So it started getting, anxiety started building up 2 years from that you figured out. It's like, oh man, it's going to be over. And as the time get closer, the more anxious you become. So things I saw early is, okay, I don't even know how to write a resume. I didn't know what LinkedIn was 2 years ago. Things of that nature, who to talk to, where can I go talk to a CEO? Where in the military, you have no business talking to a general unless you're in trouble. So there's a lot of things early that if I wish I knew maybe 5-6 years ago, where they prep you for the civilian world, or at least keep it real close.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I hadn't really thought about it, but for all the good, when I joined the Air Force, I turned 18 in boot camp. So I was really young, but I know for a fact, looking back now, that all the structure that the military provided me, and mine was in 2 stints. It was extremely helpful, and it helped me grow up at a very early age. And so it's a great thing. However, I didn't think about kind of the, when you compare and contrast your ability to talk with CEOs or higher level folks in the private sector, that is, that's you network, and it's great, and it can be encouraged, and these folks are more accessible now than ever before, versus the military, where jumping in order to talk with a general or someone at a higher end of the totem pole, that is very difficult, and to your point, it can be frowned upon, right?
Yes.
It's not allowed.
You have a good reason to be talking to anybody with a star in their collar.
It's kind of where that structure kind of holds us back a little bit. So it's double-edged sword. So you shared a few early observations, and clearly there is anxiety for even the person that's got it together. If there are folks that really can have all the answers as they come out of the military and be 100% fully prepared to go into the private sector. It's not many people like that. So there's some anxiety, and maybe it's too early on. I don't know, but do you think it's going to be more challenging or less challenging in terms of your transition based on what you heard about?
It's more challenging now only because of COVID. I honestly believe if it wasn't for COVID, I would have been set up for success by now. But with COVID, it's very challenging because the country came to a halt, a lot of hiring freeze, besides the companies that are still working, your Walmarts, your Home Depots, your Amazons, all those e-commerce companies, they're still working. But if you're a person that only had one set skill, for example, if you was a cook in the military, a lot of restaurants were shut down. So, yeah. But that's all you knew. Versus you was a military police in the military, the police did not stop hiring. So
right.
it got kind of worse. Once March came and then we took COVID serious, it got very, very hard to find to even just get conversation with people.
That's kind of where you are today. You're putting irons in the fire, trying to target both from a company standpoint and from a type of role standpoint and geographic, and we'll touch more on those. But what have you heard from other veterans? I mean, what's a couple of things that you hear, whether it's advice or experiences? What are you hearing from folks that either have already transitioned or folks that are transitioning with you?
So the main thing, I talked to a lot of people that retired before me. A lot of people tell me just make sure you know what you want, slow down. I'm a very aggressive person when it comes. I'm not a procrastinator, so I like to have a plan. I don't wait for it to just happen. So you say just slow down, it'll come to you. You'll be okay. I'm like, that's not telling me nothing. A lot of them telling me to just make sure that your first job won't be what you want. Tell me to network, start talking to people, start putting your name out there, start build your brand. It's what I get a lot. Build your brand. Make sure you know what you have to bring to the table, and you can talk about that real good. And then it just say the main thing is just the waiting game.
Yeah.
Like what you want may not happen, but you will get to it.
A second ago, we talked about kind of some of the things on your short list in terms of what you'd like to do and some of the companies you'd like to do it for, and geographically where you want to be. You know, back when I was in basic, and I would assume they still have it, you could fill out a dream list of where you wanted to be based. And funny enough, Ted, get this, as a 18-year-old that I should have joined the Air Force to see the world, I got stationed at Shaw Air Force Base in Sumter, South Carolina. I was from Aiken, South Carolina. I was an hour and 20 minutes from home. How crazy is that? So, but anyway, so back to that dream list, dream sheet comparison, whatever we called it. When you think about what you want to do, who you want to do it for, or what company you want to be a part of, and where you want to do it, share that with us.
I have a huge list for a place I want to be at. Unlike you, I never got a chance to be stationed close to home. I tried to get Fort McPherson when it was open before Tyler Perry Studios, and
yep.
Army would send me everywhere else except back to Georgia. I never got stationed in Georgia. But if I can work for companies that I respect, it'll be like the FedEx, UPS, because they're all global. Walmart is global. When I was stationed in Germany, there was a Walmart in Germany back in 2006.
Right.
I'm like, wow. And it was called Walmart. It wasn't no German name. It was like Walmart. Like, wow. When I went to Dominican Republic, it's a Walmart there. I'm like, okay, this is a global thing going on. Amazon's another one, because if it's global, that means it's room for me to see the world. I'm a person that loves to travel. FedEx, yeah, I'm trying to think who I'm forgetting. Coca-Cola, Delta, because they're from Georgia. It was like growing up in Atlanta,
yep.
You learn the history of Coca-Cola. You had to. It's in Georgia history. You had to know that it was started right there in Atlanta. You just had to.
You like these global companies because of their global transportation and logistics footprint is one of the reasons, right?
That, and because it's what I do now. Now I'm working with different interagencies that work global. You're not just talking to the Department of Transportation for the state. You're talking to the guy that lets you get stuff out of the country.
Right.
Then you got to go to that country and talk to the ambassador or the chief of station to get stuff into his country. So
yep.
The experience. And I also like them because even though they so global and world known, they do a lot of little programs for whatever community they're in. A lot of little small charities that they give that you had never heard of unless you dig deep into their company.
Yep.
So that's with them making everything, like for example, with Amazon, with the CEO of Amazon, he's given so much back during this COVID, but he's made a lot. But nobody focus on what he's made; they focus on what he's given back, and which is that's amazing, because a lot of people have to do that.
We've kind of laid out some of the organizations that really appeal to you, that you also think highly of and would love to be a part of. Now let's shift over and tell us about, I think there's a couple of roles in particular that you're really targeting. Also talk about the geographic area that ideally, if you could be there, that you'd like to be in the private sector.
One would be back home in Atlanta, because it's one the same when I left. Atlanta is now the logistic capital of the world. That was not the case when I left home, and it's so many opportunities there. Another place I would like to be is DC. because it's another place that's very job savvy, but you get to meet a lot of people. And then my dream place, of course, would be San Antonio, Texas. Never been to San Antonio. I've never been there, but it's close to South America, and I want to eventually go live in South America one day.
Okay, I didn't gather that from some of our earlier conversations. All right, so San Antonio is a really cool city. It is, having even grown up in South Carolina and now living in Georgia, how hot I'm used to our summers being. Man, San Antonio blows that away. It's crazy, but a gorgeous city.
Texas is hot. Stationed in Oklahoma, Texas, it's hot. It's hot.
But to your point, there's so much going on, in Texas, whether it's Dallas, that the Dallas market, DFW market, is a ton going on from logistics and just a general business standpoint. Austin, Houston. I'm not as familiar with the San Antonio industry side, but a ton of stuff going on, especially along the lines of your skill sets and your experience and your expertise. So who knows? So if you're listening, Atlanta, DC, or San Antonio are kind of the dream sheet for Ted here. We've already talked about some of the companies. And then finally, let's talk about specifically a couple of the roles that you're targeting, Ted.
So most like your operation managers, they have their hands in everything. Logistic specialists or logistic analysts. I'm still trying to figure out what's the difference, because in my world, logistics is logistics. You're planning from A to B, and you're figuring out all the gaps and everything that's going to need to get done. So it's I'm still trying to figure out what's different between a logistic analyst and a logistic specialist. So I would just round it to a logistic manager. And then if I have, if I can say worst case scenario, because I've been dealing with fleets and equipment, a fleet maintenance manager for a large company would be something great.
I hope that, and I know that the pandemic environment's been so challenging and an obstacle for so many candidates and employing organizations as well. But gosh, given your skill sets and given your expertise and your experiences, and one thing we didn't even touch on, because you're reflecting on your time in Iraq and what, 5 tours there, is that right?
Yes.
To be able to adapt and of course the military, that they train you how to adapt and improvise, but it's a whole different level to go over there, adapt with all the conditions, do it 5 times, make an impact, also have to bridge the gap, because you were, if I heard you correctly, you were training Iraqi soldiers. So you had those communication gaps, those cultural differences and stuff. You got to bridge all that in order to get stuff done, and to be sent back to do it time and time again, and just to keep on driving regardless of the conditions. I mean, that there's so much of what that is so relevant to change management in the private sector, especially when it comes to supply chain. I mean, I'll be interested to kind of keep my finger on the pulse of your journey as you transition and seeing that first stop you land at, Ted.
Yeah, me too, because like you said, a lot of things the military teach us is be flexible.
Yes.
Be flexible, be adaptable. So I know a lot of people look at the military as what they see on TV. Me working around, I call them Chuck Norrises, me working around a bunch of Chuck Norrises, type A personality. All they know is they need this, and you're supposed to get it for me, and you got to deal with it. Yeah. So try to clear that stigma of how people see soldiers or just military people, especially, some of my brother Marines and stuff. Everyone's not like that, but we are very flexible, and we change with that, with the environment, constantly change with the environment.
Really well put. Hey, on that note, because you mentioned what folks see on TV, and I know that this movie has plenty of, well, I've heard it has plenty of military flaws. I saw a few of them last night, but A Few Good Men, hadn't seen it in a long time, and I watched it last night. Have you seen that in a while?
That's the one with Cuba Gooding Jr.?
No, that's the one with Tom Cruise is a naval defense attorney.
I honestly have never been on that side of the military when it comes to courtroom and court martial. But the personalities, when it comes to O grades, I've been in a room where they are ruthless to each other. But that's them, because that's their competition.
Right.
O grade, I'm so glad I'm not a normal commission officer, because it's too political. It's just, oh my goodness, y'all are ruthless to each other. But you're professional all the time. But
right.
that movie is spot on. when it comes to the politics on how they interact. But with the lengths we go to just that friendly competition. Because at the end of the day, no matter who wins, who loses, they both friends. At the end of the day, it's personal. It's business, never personal.
Well, good stuff there. Well, that scene, so it's that infamous scene where Jack Nicholson is the full-board Marine colonel, and he's being questioned by, the young, early-term naval officer, Tom Cruise, an experienced naval officer with one ribbon. It's such a great, Jack Nicholson plays like a perfect full-board Marine colonel, It's just like grizzly, and it's going to make stuff happen, and you can't handle the truth. But anyway, good stuff here today. We've been talking with Ted Turner, who has just recently, he retired June 1st, 2020. Congratulations again. He officially separates and gets that blue card he was talking about on the 1st of September, 2020. Hey, Ted, real quick, as we wrap up, where can folks connect with you to learn more, whether it's talk about opportunities or just pick your brain and dive into some of your thought leadership you've been sharing?
The best way to reach me is through LinkedIn or through my email, which is theodore.t.turner@gmail.com. And I'm always monitoring both. I don't have the Facebook or anything like that. So
that's okay. It's probably you're better off, maybe. Better off. Well, Ted, it's a pleasure. Thank you so much for the service to your country over the last 20 years. I wish you all the best in this transition. We look forward to helping out however we can. I love the last hour or so we've spent with you as we've been able to get to know you a little bit even better than we were initially. And I bet our audience has enjoyed it as well. So on that note, big thanks to Ted Turner. Best of luck on the mission. So to our audience, on behalf of the entire team here at Veteran Voices, hope you have enjoyed this episode. We wish you nothing but the best. Hey, keep in mind, do good, give forward, and be the change that's needed. And on that note, we'll see you next time here. Thanks, everybody.